Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. A special edition this week. This is the Mount Rushmore, per se, of the All Access Entertainment Podcast. We have three, not one, not two, but three special guests this week. And we're going to start her off with the man below me. As you see, he is the face of my face on a figure. He is the face of the Figures Toy Company. Of course, known in some circles as Zach Malibu, maybe even Mr. Movie Review. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Depetrillo.
What's up, everybody? Joe, it's been a while. Thank you for having me on. Good to see all of you lovely people here tonight.
Should we clap for him?
We could always put that in.
That was a good intro. That was a good intro.
Do a little we're gonna dub in the applause like an old school sitcom.
Yes.
We'll add that in.
Up next to the lower right, we have none other than the suntan Superman himself, former New England wrestler as well for a short period of time there. And of course, known in some circles as Slick Rick, Mr. Ricky Gonzalez, ladies and gentlemen. No clapping for that one? All right.
No, those are all right intro. I like it.
What else? What else you got? You know?
I should have sent everything beforehand, but we'll do that for next time. But
we'll do that.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Give Joe the list like Bob Cruz had for Steve Carino.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also to the upper right, or my left, or your right, or well, whatever it is. Some circles he's known as Shiesty. Of course, we also know him as Chip, former New England wrestler himself as well. The man with two first names, Mr. Matt Kenney, ladies and gentlemen. Come on.
A double first name, yeah, or the man of many names. So
absolutely.
Thanks.
So before we get started, cool. Kind of go around. We'll start with Chris. If you guys want to just kind of give a brief, how long you've been a wrestling fan and what it's all about. Let's hear it.
So for me, it started back when I was a kid watching wrestling with my older cousins, probably 1984. Grew up here in Rhode Island, up in the Northeast. You would think WWF was the first thing that I watched, being that it was so prevalent up here. But it was actually world-class wrestling that got me hooked. I was a big Von Erichs fan when I was a kid. Used to appear in syndication on one of the channels out of Boston up here. So I started with that and then actually discovered the NWA next and then finally the WWF last. But I've been a fan my whole life. Luckily, have been able to transition into something wrestling adjacent for a career. I started work at Figures Toy Company on my 19th birthday in 1999. So getting to work with the licensing for ECW, WCW, the WWF, then WWE, Ring of Honor, working with a lot of the great independent talents, some of the legends like Jim Cornette. It's just been one hell of a ride. And now I'm raising a fan. My son will be 11 this year, and he's just as big of a fan as I was at his age. So it's really cool to kind of have that generation passing the torch and getting to enjoy the old stuff with him as well as the new stuff.
Awesome. Ricky Gonzalez?
That's pretty awesome. With my fanhood started with WWF, probably late 80s, I want to say. That's like, core memories from back then. I think I just stumbled upon it, to be honest with you. I have some pictures. I'll have to show you guys. I don't know, I'm maybe like 4 or 5. It's not WWF action figures, but it's a ring and some action figures, maybe like AWA if they had some figures.
The Remco style.
Yeah, they I don't think they're the Remco because I actually have some of those. They could have been like some bootleg figures, but nonetheless, I'm there. I'm probably like 4 or 5 playing with action figures, little wrestling figures. So I just really good memories. And it's weird. Like my wife's always making fun of me. We go back and she's like, you always kind of bridge the gap with your timeline with something that was going on in wrestling at the time. Especially once I hit like 92, 93, 94. I know Chris does this a lot as well, but it's right kind of like, I just remember those moments so fondly. And that was like the peak when it all started, where it was just like, I couldn't get enough of it. So, we go way back, and now really, in all fairness, I try to keep up with the AEW stuff. We were watching it actually last night, possibly. But mostly WWE is what I'm watching these days. So
Matt Kenney.
1990. So I would have been 7, and just Saturday mornings in front of my television, getting to watch Saturday morning cartoons. Bozo the Clown's local syndicated show up here in New England. I think it was filmed in East Providence, right? Something like that.
Rehoboth.
Rehoboth. Oh, that's okay.
I was
Which
on
seems
that
so
show
far
when
away.
I was younger. I was on the Bozo show.
Those were my dreams, to be on the Bozo show and win the G.I. Joe prize that they always have. It was always like a big thing. Anyway, but it was Bozo, it was whatever cartoons, all these other things, and then bam, Wrestling Challenge or WWE, WWF Superstars. And it was like, I don't remember how, why, or when. I must have just seen it. And I was like instantly hooked, like, let's go. And I mean, I don't even remember having a lot of other friends in school at that time that even cared or liked it. To be honest with you, it kind of was just like my thing, and it just became my thing, and it became a thing that would follow me nonstop for the rest of my existence, which leads into the figures and watching it and just paying attention to it. And I've been what's the word you want to say when a fan of everything for the most part, but really WWE, WWF. Like I started there and I followed that. Like I was the guy who would turn to Nitro during the commercials and then turn back. I wouldn't do the opposite, or watch the first hour of Nitro and then go to Raw, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, we're going on like 40 years of fandom now, and that's why we're all here today, right?
Yeah,
seriously. And you also, I got you a gig at Figures Toy Company for a while, and then Ricky helped out on a couple of truck unloadings and stuff like that. Back in the day when they were here in Rhode Island. So, and Joe spent a lot of money at Figures Toy Company.
What's crazy is just, how it brings people together, right? So like me and Matt sat next to each other in science class in 1998, and I don't know him, he doesn't know me. We kind of just, and somehow wrestling comes up and instant friends. Like it was like, oh, you like wrestling? Like, yeah, I like and that was it. Like that's all it took. I
can't pinpoint
know anything else. Yeah, and it was
like what specifically, what was said or what was done. It had to have been something big that happened, and we talked. But I could never remember the actual moment.
Yeah, but that's all it took.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. I look back and like I have so many friendships because of wrestling, and like really good friends because of wrestling, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm a couple of years older than you guys. I graduated in 1998. So when I was going into high school, that was like just like the terrible kind of like lame era that predated the Attitude Era and everything. And so I was into it. I still had friends that were into it, like older, younger, whatever. But my freshman year algebra teacher was a Wrestling Observer newsletter subscriber. And I didn't know what that was at that time. And I saw it laying on his desk one day. And I asked him, and he had gotten it because he had ordered some videos from it was probably RF Video, because he was the most prevalent tape trader at that point, or tape seller at that point. And so I used to get photocopies of the Observer every week. And so that's when I started reading more into like the behind the scenes of the business, contracts are coming due, new TV shows, this guy's jumping ship and all that stuff. So of course that kind of became the talk among like my circle of wrestling friends. So then when everything blew up in 96, everyone's asking me, did you get your newsletter? Did you hear what's going on? Like, can you confirm this? Is this guy jumping ship? And I kind of became like the go-to guy for wrestling news. And because guys, girls, like everyone was watching it, but I was the one walking around with the Observer. And nowadays you can look everything up, there's a rumor on Reddit, a rumor on Twitter. You don't know what's true. Now I like to just kind of sit back and enjoy it. I mean, we'll talk about stuff that we hear, but I'll watch all the shows to see how things play out. But back then everybody was so desperate to kind of get the jump on the knowledge, and they'd always be asking. So it was like, if I had that newsletter, it kind of became the talk of the lunch table. Like, oh my God, this is going to happen on Raw tonight. And it's kind of like with movies with me, like I don't care about spoilers because I'll still watch it play out. But there was just this whole group of people, like all these people that were just casual fans or not even fans a couple of years prior. And now they're asking about like, what's Stone Cold's contract status? Or is Macho Man really going back to WWF? And it was just kind of funny because that was the era where there was so much information coming out. And it was cool to not just talk about the shows, but all that behind the scenes banter, because the internet wasn't as big as it is now. There was no social media or Facebook or anything, which probably helped contain a lot of the rumors. And nowadays, there's podcasts talking about reading those old newsletters and disproving some of those rumors too. So people are still making money off those newsletters 30 years later.
My go-to was the Journal line for all my information, insider info.
That was solid.
It was such a good.
Remember that number?
277-7777.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah,
press 4. It was like for.
I thought it was press 7, but I couldn't.
Or maybe 7 for wrestling. It was like because it was all like each sports and whatever, and then it was like press 7 for pro wrestling news, and then I remember my most distinct memory of that was he told me that Harlem Heat was jumping ship from WCW to WWF, and I could not have been more excited when I heard that. I was like, yes, I can't wait. Let's go. Harlem Heat and WWF. Obviously didn't happen, but
Is that the same guy that said Yokozuna was joining the Hart Foundation?
It might have been, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I remember one where I was devastated. I'm pretty sure Raw went off the air and the tag match didn't finish, but Razor was in it. Obviously, I'm a big Razor guy, and it spoiled. I think it was against Owen and maybe Bulldog. It was like Razor and Kid for the tag team titles, and Raw went off the air. Was it Owen and Yoko? All right.
Owen and Yoko.
And then it just, we didn't get the ending on Raw. And then I went on the news and it spoiled for the next week, and I was devastated. But
I remember it must have been like within the first month or two of Raw when they were trying to do the whole anything can happen. And I think it was Mr. Perfect and Rick Martel, and it was, it was a tape show, but we didn't know that. They were acting like it was live. But they said that the match ended during the commercial break. So when they came back, they showed you the finish. They're like, oh, we're sorry. Like the match ended during the commercial. Here's what you guys missed while, whatever. There's like a shampoo commercial on.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, it was like 3 or 4 years. It was like 1985, 1986, and watching wrestling with my brother, Tony. And fast forward to like 88 was my first time going to the WWF with my mom at the Providence Civic Center. And we were up in the nosebleeds. It was our very first time. But that got me hooked. I was so pumped. And I used to watch it every Saturday like Matt. And, from there, I kind of just never turned back, got hooked, and really started going regularly from like 93 on. So from 93 to probably 2003, I don't think I missed one show at the Providence Civic Center. And I would travel to Worcester Centrum and Boston and different places over the years like you guys did. And I had my early connections with Figure Toy Company, as a fan, going to Anthony's home, the owner, and checking out his Star Wars collection and looking in his attic at all the huge pieces that he had and the big displays. And my mom would take me to the store when it was just a showroom. Where was that originally, in Johnston or?
No, it was in Cranston off of Cranston Street.
Okay.
It was Puritan Avenue. It was that building that was right in the middle of the road.
Yes.
And there was the little showroom. There was a rack of T-shirts, and like there'd be figures on the wall, be boxes of like the old PWI magazine and WWF magazine.
Yeah.
Because that's where I started. We didn't get the like the little city that was unto ourselves, like the 4 buildings, until 2000 when we had the WWF license, when we got the warehouse that we converted into the offices and everything.
Yeah, I was going there in the late 80s, and he'd have a box in the back with little sealed plastic bags with individual Star Wars figures. And they were loose, obviously, so that's the way I would start to purchase those, and really got hooked on those. And then obviously the wrestling, the early, the Hasbro figure, especially the green card series, which was so hard to get. Anthony had all of them. So that's where I bought Atom Bomb and 1-2-3 Kid. And, I remember even back then in 1995 or whatever that was, 1-2-3 Kid was $60. And
wow.
Yeah, my mom picked that up for me. And, I was just kind of hooked ever since. But went on to do ring announcing, obviously, and promoting, and founding the New England Hall of Fame, the New England Fan Fest, and always been involved in the wrestling business. Obviously, I met Matt probably 1999. You came to my very first HWF show with Justin, who was a mutual friend of ours. And then we started kind of going, back and forth to the pay-per-view parties, probably around 2000, 2001. And that's when it started. And then Chris started coming around, I think maybe 2002 or 2003 for the pay-per-view parties. And obviously I'd see Ricky there, and the rest is history. So all these years later, still talking wrestling. So let's do it. Mount Rushmore. Right? I know, exactly. Mount Rushmore. Let's kick it off. Mount Rushmore with finishing moves. Ooh. We're going to do a finishing move Mount Rushmore. Now, obviously, with some of these, like the men's Mount Rushmore, we'll do both a personal preference Mount Rushmore, and then, of course, who you think should actually be on the top. But with finishing moves, we'll just do the one. And let's start with Chris Depetrillo.
Okay, so finishing moves. This is probably going to seem biased based on where the conversation is going to take us later. Got to put the Stone Cold Stunner at number 1, just because of the quickness to it, just the way it looks, the many pops that it got out of the fans, and obviously who it belonged to. I think all of that would want to put that up there. Number 2, just because of how memorable it is, even though by today's terms it's not as flashy. Macho Man's flying elbow. That's nobody hits an elbow like Macho Man. Just the way the guy was a human highlight reel just for that one move, which nowadays feels like a transition move in some of these matches. But to me, classic. Number 3, I would do the super kick. Everybody uses it now. Now, again, you want to talk about a move that's become a transition move. But Shawn Michaels obviously took that one to the top, and then a lot of people adapted it. But as far as just maneuvers, I like those quick, flat, not too flashy maneuvers that can end a match. And for that reason, similar to the Stone Cold Stunner, I would go with the Diamond Cutter, which now has been adapted by many people. But I think that move actually really helped elevate Diamond Dallas Page when they kind of ascended him up to the top of the card in the mid-90s.
Ricky.
Jeez, that's pretty close to where I was going. I definitely had the Stunner in there, just like the impact. Hogan's leg drop, man. And like kind of Chris, with the elbow drop, but something about that as a kid, you just saw him run the ropes, and once that leg came down, it was a wrap. Like you knew it was the 1, 2, 3. I was also going to say the super kick, Sean super kick, and what it turned into, and it stinks now, right? Because like everyone does the super kick, and it's like, you get an Uso tag team match, and there's 15 of them going on, and but it's still something that when Sean hit it, just the difference. So definitely the super kick. And the other one, kind of along the same lines, was just Jake's DDT, man. Something about that. So Aiden just got a Jake figure for Christmas, and we play almost every night. So I'm like, oh, I'll be Jake the Snake, but just the way he hit it, it's so different. You watch the DDTs now, and even though the guys take the move a lot better now, something with this snap, like once he hooked you in for that and just dropped down, it was just to this day, if you go back and watch it, just looks so smooth, and like everything he did was just so crisp. So I would probably go with the DDT as well. And like Chris said with the super kick transition, like everyone does a DDT now. But there's something about Jake's is just different. It was kind of like Arn Anderson spine buster type of thing in that realm.
Matt Kenney. Your mic is muted. Gone.
Shut down. Up.
Nothing.
Oh, there we go.
We got you.
We heard you. Oh,
no, now you're going again.
Silent again.
How's that?
Yeah,
now we can hear you.
Perfect.
Technology, I love it. Sorry.
That's right.
From a finisher perspective, that's what we're talking about, right? Because it's a finishing maneuver. So you're right. Everyone hits a super kick. Everyone hits a DDT. I mean, everyone hits an elbow drop, that kind of thing. So it's like, but you got to put yourself in the perspective of the finisher, right? When it was a finisher, when you knew when it hit, that guy on the receiving end of it was looking up at the lights, and that was at 1, 2, 3, right? So yeah, I mean, not that we're breaking any grounds here with this like stunner, Stone Cold Stunner. Definitely, because, and not to mention just the finishing aspect of it, because it looks so cool and it put people down, and the guys who sold it right, like some guys who would bounce up, some guys would just take it, whatever. But also the fact that how many times were we on our couches just, going nuts when Austin's music would hit and he'd just run out and hit it on everybody, right? And go crazy, which brought that move to like a whole nother level, which we didn't necessarily get that. You know, Hogan didn't hit 19 leg drops in one show. You know what I mean? It was just 1, 2, 3. He was out. So, I mean, that's got to go there, right? Hogan, and I think Hogan's leg drop has to go there because it was like the simplest thing ever, but from 1984 to now, when he jumped up and came down with that leg, you knew that guy wasn't kicking out, right? And like that to me always set the bar for just what a finishing move kind of is. But honestly, another one that I would put on this list, it given that context, would be the RKO. And because Randy Orton took that and like the Austin thing and combined it with the Hogan thing, nobody kicks out of the RKO, right? And he also hits it on everybody, and he can come out of nowhere and like, and it looks different, and it pops a crowd, and it hits. And to me, it's just always such a fun move, and it's such a fun thing that he came up with and turned it into something like larger than life, basically. And so those would be like definitely 3. And then I think if I was going to put a 4th up on the mountain, I got to go with Sharpshooter. I got to go with the Sharpshooter because it looked like it hurt a lot. And Brett always made it look like it was like it hurt a lot. And it made you go like, yeah, no, this guy is in too much pain. He's got to get out. And with a lot of iconic moments behind it. And it also seems like Brett's the only guy that could ever do it perfectly. You know, like it seems like anytime somebody else tries to kind of do it, there's always a little hesitation. There's always a little thing. And that's fine. That's totally their thing. I get it. But like, I don't know, that Sharpshooter to me just always stood out as like, that's something I wouldn't even want to be in if I was a wrestler, you know? And I think that kind of puts it in that upper echelon of finishers.
Yeah. When it comes to finishers, like I don't know, it's just, I know times have changed. Wrestling's different now, but it was so much better. I thought when they hit that was it. You knew it was over, and for me, Jake the Snake's DDT has to be on there. I remember when he returned in the 1996 Royal Rumble, I was so pumped. He got a huge pop, comes in. There's at one point in the match where he's about to do the DDT. And it was maybe to Vader or somebody, and he signals for it. Crowd's going crazy, and he gets clotheslined and falls over the top rope, and he's done. And I'm like, well, you got to be kidding me. But when he would hit that DDT, like it was over, and that was always something to look forward to. Razor's Edge would be a second one for me, because of the presentation of it. It just looked so cool. It was so unique. It wasn't like any other move, and it was pretty devastating too. And, you knew when he was going to hit the Razor's Edge, that was it. No one's getting out of that.
No one kicked out. I think one person kicked out of the Razor's Edge because I looked, no one kicked out of it in either promotion or, well, he's been in a ton, but that was awesome. It was very protected.
And number 3 for me would be Brett Sharpshooter. Like you said, when he did the Sharpshooter, it fit like a glove. Like there was nobody else that could touch the Sharpshooter. Even when Sting did it, I didn't think it was as good as Bret Hart doing that. And number 4 for me would be Undertaker's Tombstone. Undertaker was always my favorite growing up, but I mean, it was just devastating. You know what I mean? When he hit that, it was, you get excited when he would pull that out. And for me, 2 honorable mentions would be, number 1, DDP with the diamond cutter. Because before Randy Orton, DDP is pulling that thing out of nowhere. He's got all these variations. He would do it off the ropes. He would do it, out of nowhere. So, that came first. And then Yokozuna's Banzai Splash.
Devastating.
Crazy. Especially when he worked with enhancement talent. Like he would let it go. He would let it
Except
go.
for SummerSlam 96. That was the only time that
was a rough one. Yeah. They should probably tighten the ropes maybe next time.
Well, they have those clips with Yokozuna, like the devastating Banzai drops on YouTube. And then like, especially when he worked with the enhancing talent,
the local
those were
guys.
rough. But just to go back to Brett, right, with the Sharpshooter, there was something about it when he used to lock it in or like toss his hair back or like just crank his back. It's just no one hit it like Brett till this day. And then you also think about all these moves, right? Out of all the moves, the leg drops, the stunners, what did we do as kids? The Sharpshooter on everyone. Like every time you wrestle, like my little sister, I'm just sharpshooter every day because it's something that we could do. Like it was nice and easy. You know, we're kids, we can't power bomb or tombstone it, but we can definitely do a sharpshooter. So you're playing with your friends, you're locking in the sharpshooter, and then just the way Brett did it all the time, different ways. Like I think Royal Rumble 93 with Razor, they're kind of laying there. And he starts hooking them in. They're both laying flat, and he's hooking Razor in, and all of a sudden he's in the sharpshooter. Right. And it was devastating for me. I cried that day when Razor lost. I was like, he's really going to win the belt. But it was just the way Brett did it, man. He's
and also gave us one of the most iconic moments in wrestling history at 13 when he had in Austin. You know, like, I mean, that's, you know, that type of thing. Just we'll never see something like that again on that level because of what it did for everything. But yeah, it's just
that's the most famous sharpshooter right there.
Absolutely,
it's got to be right.
Yeah. All right, so up next, our next Mount Rushmore is entrance music.
Oh man.
I mean, I'm a big theme guy. Some of you guys are as well. You got to have an entrance music of Mount Rushmore. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. So let's start this off with Matthew Kenney himself.
Putting me on the spot with this one, you know, and I've thought about this a million times, like, because I listen to the themes all the time, you know, and that's the thing. And like you said, we're kind of doing the what should be the Mount Rushmore and overall, not necessarily our personal something for this, because my personal one's going to have Gangrel. It's going to have, you know, so like, but I don't know if this necessarily belongs in the upper echelon of like all time music, because
well, for entrance music, you can just do personal because we're just going to do the one.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm just thinking for myself, you know, because Gangrel, the Brood theme is, I mean, that's something you turn up to 30 in the car and just play it and just move your head and just go wild. We all know that is an iconic theme, entrance, everything. So that one hits. And I listen to it. I literally listen to it like a song, and we'll listen to the whole thing until the end, until it fades out, because it's that damn good. Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm creating my own, then that one's going up there 100%. Man, it's tough because there's so many good ones in over the years. And actually, honestly, I gotta go the NWO theme. I freaking love that, man. That riff, and the not the one with the million voiceovers, you know, where they went crazy for a while and all that. I'm just talking about like the straight up clean, you know, the one that's online that's like 2 minutes. It's the perfect. It's just such a great. It's so great. It's so great to listen to. And so following that one also is Booker T's Harlem Heat's WCW theme.
Fire.
That, but I will say I like the WWE version of it that starts off with the "Can you dig it?" So, and it's like big and explosive, like that one. That theme is just so great. It's so much fun. And again, it's another one that I hit play on it and I'm listening to the whole thing from start to finish. And man, the fourth one always seems to be the toughest for some reason, right? Like, and I'm like looking for inspiration. I'm trying to think. Bret Hart's Full Metal theme, not the original, not the Hart Foundation, not whatever the one they give him for the last few years.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Bret Hart's theme.
Running on the podcast.
Mr. Al Fera. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Al Fera.
I should have hit the Dusty theme as soon as he came in.
Oh, that's another one. Shit.
I know. But so number 4 is that Bret when that intro hits, and that's another one when you put Full Metal the album in and you go from the start, and I listen to that all the way through, and it's iconic, and it hits. It's just so good. So I'm gonna go Gangrel. We're gonna go NWO, the good one. We're gonna go Booker T / Harlem Heat, but like WWE version, and then we're gonna go Bret the Hitman Hart from the Full Metal album.
I'll go next. You know, for me personally, obviously, I've always been obsessed with entrance music, with theme songs. I could pick it apart all day. I have a million favorites. So I'm just going to throw 4 out there that I really like, and I'll probably change my mind tomorrow. But, you know, when it comes to entrance music, Psycho Sid. I love the WWE or WWF version of Psycho Sid. Tremendous. That's probably my number 1. Number 2 would be Crush, Babyface Crush. when he used to come out, get the crowd all hyped up. Love that theme. Harlem Heat is number 3 for me. And either way, either Harlem Heat or the Booker T version, pretty much very similar. And number 1 for me, though, would be Kurt Angle. I always loved that theme. The Patriot kind of used a very similar version, and I love that theme. And then when he left, I was like, man, now that theme's gone. And then Kurt Angle used it, and I was like, wow, it's amazing.
Core memory unlocked. The day that I was able to finally download the Patriots theme from the AOL WWF site was the greatest day of my life, because the only thing I had up to that point was this weird, like, taped, somebody had uploaded like a taped version of it or something. Like there was crowd noise or there was TV, something in the background. And then at one point they just, for some reason, it popped up in the chat, because there were downloads in the AOL site, different things. You could have themes. They weren't like always complete. But man, when that Patriot one was, I was like, oh my God, yes. And I just, saved it and would play it over, because it wasn't on any CDs. It wasn't in the mid 90s. It didn't come out until volume 5, right? I think it was volume 5.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. With Taz and those guys. Yeah. So it was, that was great. Anyway.
And next we'll skip right over to our latest addition. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Al Fera. He is a longtime wrestling fan, the number 1 Dusty Rhodes fan, without a doubt, and the Dennis Stamp of our era, Al Fera.
Yeah, I apologize for my tardiness. I do apologize for my tardiness.
It's okay. So we're talking entrance music, Mount Rushmore. Let's hear it.
You have Dusty Rhodes, without a doubt. You have the fabulous Rougeau brothers.
Oh, that's a good one.
You have Demolition.
That's a good one, too.
And Shawn Michaels.
Sherry or his version?
His version.
All right.
It's a little more cleaner at that point. It seemed like it hits a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Demolition is like very, very, very much of a black sheep. Not many people talk about it. It's a great theme song.
Oh.
It does get skipped over a bit, I do think, in the timeline of that, like sometimes. But I don't think people necessarily don't like it. I just think it gets forgotten in an era when we had Hogan and Warrior, and it's tough not to put those guys up, but we're talking personal, not right. So
yeah,
I guess Shawn Michaels and Real American, they can go back and forth. That's your number 4.
And Rick Derringer did both Demolition and Hogan's theme.
R.I.P. Rick Derringer.
Ricky Gonzalez.
Oh, man, this is one of those questions, like you said, you can go back and forth every hour. Your answers can change depending on what mood you're in, right? Razor Ramon, obviously for me, definitely up there. Ultimate Warrior, man. As a little kid, when to this day, man, that music hits. Just the energy that came along with it is absolutely phenomenal. Definitely have them up there. Legion of Doom. Ooh. When you hear that, what a rush in the beginning. There's nothing nothing like it, man. That is like next level stuff. And man, like, even right now, I love Roman's theme. It changed a little bit, and it's so funny because when he changed from the Shield to what he currently has now, I was so angry. I was so mad. I was like, why would they do that? But it just works with his character. But I'm not going to toss that in there. That's like hanging. That would be like number 5. But I'm going to go with John Cena, man. Especially, like over the last year. I was lucky enough to go, I was at SummerSlam. I was at his last show in Boston, and just the energy when that hit, whether it was Cena now, which everyone was like, very happy to see him, or even when he was in that era where, the Cena sucks, no matter what, when that theme hit, it just meant something. You felt something different. So I'm definitely going to toss Cena in there.
Chris Depetrillo.
So 2 on mine have been mentioned. Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream theme song. That polka dot era, a lot of people try not to reflect on that one. I think it was a goofy era, but that is a great theme song. It's just catchy. Like it gets you in a good mood. Like you can't hate the world when that song's playing. And then Demolition, I was going to mention that one. That one, I think I don't know if it's so much. I think it's overlooked by this generation. Like for our generation, I think it's appreciated, but I think it's just kind of been forgotten to time. Um, Stone Cold Steve Austin, not just for the glass hit, but it's a good representation of his character. It's not a theme that you can really like play to. It really makes you feel like you're gonna get your ass kicked. You're in some kind of danger. So it's just like a good, like I like that little riff. And then my all-time favorite theme song, which is known by this group here, or should be known, is actually also a Steve Austin theme song. It's the Hollywood Blondes theme song, which initially was not even their song. It was production music that was used by Jake the Snake Roberts when he first debuted in WCW. And when the Hollywood Blondes split up and when Pillman and Austin left, they used it. I believe it was Greg Valentine used it on some of those nitros he appeared on in the mid 90s. But there
One
were
of
a couple
Ricky's
of different
personal favorites.
Booker T, the Harlem Heat music, that's actually production music.
Right.
I don't know if you want to call it public domain, but it's from like a music catalog because it's the same type of catalog that Lex Luger's late 90s WCW song came from. Mark Mero's theme came from it, and the Hollies
Lex
theme
theme
came from it.
Mark Mero, the marvelous Mark Mero theme was such a good rip. But I've heard that on like other TV and stuff. Because I remember hearing it and being like, wait a second, what's going on? I think there's another one. I know the Hardy Super. There's another one, right? Isn't there another guy who has a?
There's a few of them. Well, the Luger theme from WCW is what they used for the WWF Hotline at the same time.
That's right.
So that song was actually being used by both companies. Right. But I love that Hollywood Blondes theme song. I mean, they're my favorite tag team of all time. Spoiler alert, I'm sure we'll get into more of that as we talk more about our favorites here tonight. But it's just a great guitar riff. I love that song.
And it escapes me right now, but when Marvelous Mark Mero was using that marvelous theme, somebody in WCW was using it at the same time. That was another one that was used at the same exact time. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this before, and I cannot for the life of me remember.
And I don't think it was anybody up the card. It might have been like a lower card guy, just like a guy you would see on like every fourth episode of Nitro. He'd pop up.
Yeah,
Hard Work Bobby Walker or somebody.
Yeah. Not only was Rick Rude on WWF and WCW at the same time, they also used the same themes a few times.
Wait a minute. Al Fera is back, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, there he is.
Al Fera, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, pick it up.
Technical difficulties. I apologize.
That's all right. You're like that guy in the window on the Tom Green show. You know what I mean?
Phil.
So next, actually, let's go back to Al for the first one, since you weren't here for that part. The Mount Rushmore of finishing maneuvers. Let's hear yours.
You have a figure four. I think the figure four is up there. I think you have Benoit's flying headbutt or Dynamite Kid's flying headbutt.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Jackknife Powerbomb, but I'm gonna go the Diesel. And I'm gonna go Bionic Elbow.
Okay. All right.
There you go. Well, the Diesel, right? The Diesel Powerbomb was different than others because he used to just, like let him go kind of, and instead of slamming him. And it was like a fun visual because he would just, never forget that clip of Bob Backlund getting power from the house show, when Diesel won the title. It was like
quick victory right there.
Yeah.
So up next, let's talk tag teams. The tag team Mount Rushmore. We'll bang it out quick. Let's do a personal favorite for tag teams, and then a regular version of who actually, should be on the top in our opinion. So I'll start it off. Tag team, personal. Got to put Legion of Doom. One of my all-time favorite tag teams. Demolition is neck and neck with them, so Demolition got to be there. After that, I would have to say Men on a Mission. I was always a fan of Men on a Mission as a kid. Ricky, and then beyond that, I would probably have to go with
God.
Come on now. As a kid, the Bushwhackers. I was a big fan, so gotta go with the Bushwhackers. That's my personal four right there. But then, as far as who should be on the top, you got to put Rock and Roll Express, in my opinion. You got to put the Heart Foundation. You got to put the Midnight Express. and you've got to put probably the Road Warriors. Matt Kenney.
Yeah, Legion of Doom, just all time, right? And I'm even their theme too, like that. I think I've said that to you, Ricky, before. Their entrances, that's like an all-time entrance. Just the whole presentation of those guys. So yeah, definitely LOD for me. Hardy Boys, honestly, Hardys and Dudleys. To be honest with you, Hardys and Dudleys. 2 and 3 right there, sandwiched in the middle. Personally, just super fun to watch. Always entertaining. Transcended the business, right? Lasted forever, still going. People love them. We're doing things today that they were doing back then. Everybody calls for it, that kind of thing. And man,
let me guess, another WWF team.
No, this is just personal favorites. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, Harlem Heat. I got on Harlem Heat. I loved me some Harlem Heat, as I said earlier. Right? I couldn't wait for them to come over to the WWF back in the 90s. So yeah, but I think in the grand scheme of things, right? Who maybe the general people should think, right? Road Warriors, Rock and Roll Express, for the innovation for sure. But I think the Hardys are going to be on there for no matter what. I think that they have to live on, and depending on the era, if you ask people now, in the last 20 years, they're probably going to say the Usos, right? But if you ask people like us going back, then, Edge and Christian, Dudleys. So Dudleys, Hardys, Rock and Roll, LOD. Those for me would be like the upper 4 for everybody.
Nice. Chris Depetrillo.
The British Bulldogs, for me, I was a big British Bulldogs fan when I was a kid, so they're definitely on mine. The Midnight Express, one of my favorite teams, both versions, the Dennis Condrey and Bob Eaton version and the Stan Lane. So I might be cheating by saying that, but both incarnations of the Midnight Express, I was obsessed with them as a kid. I was a big heel fan growing up, thanks to my cousin. So for me, it was all about the Four Horsemen and the Midnight Express when I was watching NWA.
When you said both versions, I thought the new Midnight Express. Wait a
minute. No, not Bob Holly and Bart Gunn. No, there's nothing bombastic or bodacious about this. Okay. I'm getting so caught up on like the runner-up. Not that there's any particular listing except for my top team, because I want to say Heart Foundation, but then I think more modern, and I really enjoyed Edge and Christian. They were probably my favorite team out of that whole Attitude era. But I think maybe for the work with the Bulldogs, I'll lean towards Heart Foundation because I was really a fan of those matches. And then my favorite tag team, touched on it when we were talking about theme songs, even as short-lived as they were great. I love the Hollywood Blondes. I love that combination of Pillman and Austin. I love the whole vibe, the vests, coming out, the roll camera, just like a great heel team that was cut off way too soon. But that is my favorite team of all time.
Al Fera.
I think I'm going to echo everybody else's sentiment. So I definitely have the Midnight Express up there. I'm throwing the Brain Busters in there. Short-lived, but phenomenal workers. Tully Blanchard, highly underrated. I'm going to have to say the Heart Foundation. And then rounding that out, I would go with someone a little weird. I would probably throw, they're newer in my eyes, but I think they are a touch of old school, touch of new school. I'm going to throw the Revival in there.
Okay. Very nice. FTR.
That's good.
Ricky Gonzalez.
See, I always hear like as far as like tag teams and like Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express, I didn't really see their work. Like I watched clips here and there, so I'm sure they did great things. But for me, like I wouldn't, like my personal list, I can't put them on there because I haven't seen enough of them. So I'm sure they were excellent. Everything I hear is like they were great, but I didn't grow up in that era. So for me, definitely like the Heart Foundation, Legion of Doom, and then just kind of like now, I would say the Usos because of what they've done as a tag team, and I'm going based off like how long they've been in the company, what they've, accomplishments, their body of work overall, even now splitting up and with the singles thing, then it looks like they're getting back together now. So I'll definitely go Usos and then the New Day. Also because of their body of work and the transformation from, you took 3 guys that seemed to be dead in the water, and then they were just massive and they get everyone involved. So yeah, that's what I'm leaning towards.
Awesome.
A little bit of trivia. So the Usos debuted on my birthday in 2010, May 24th, 2010.
Wow.
So we're going on, 16 years since then. And
that's crazy.
To see what they've become since that era, it's wild. It's super impressive.
Yeah, they showed
Yeah,
up with
you have to give
night.
them credit because
yeah,
it's just the longevity is there.
Crazy.
I loved a lot of teams in the 90s. You got like Rock and Sock, you get these power like Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels
Outsiders.
tag teams, the Outsiders. Like realistically, like yeah, those would be my favorite tag teams. But it was kind of like they were put together for a storyline, or they didn't have a long run.
So up next, we can do personal favorite only, and this one is the Mount Rushmore of factions. So a faction over the time, obviously there have been a ton of factions over the years. So I'll start for me personally, the Ministry of Darkness. I absolutely love the Ministry of Darkness. The NWO, not so much when there were 50 people in it, but when there were just a handful of people. The Hart Foundation, 1997, is my all-time favorite. I mean, I absolutely love that group of 5. And the Nation of Domination. Always enjoyed the Nation. Chris Depetrillo.
So for me, I'm definitely going to go 4 Horsemen. That was what hooked me on the NWA. I was obsessed with the Horsemen as a kid. That's to me, that's just the end all be all of factions right there. The Hart Foundation, 1997 version of the Hart Foundation. I love that. As far as I have to put them out there because they were short-lived. They didn't have the longevity and not really even the impact. But I love the Dangerous Alliance. Paulie Dangerously's Dangerous Alliance with Rick Rude, Bobby Eaton, Larry Zbyszko. Just a great stable. That just led to a great War Games. I love that whole late 91 through 92 era of WCW. And then the last one I'll say is one that you guys will understand why, because it was spearheaded by one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. We're going to go extreme with this one, the Triple Threat, led by the franchise Shane Douglas. I know there were several different versions of it, but both the Chris Candido and Brian Lee version from 96 to 97, and then the version with Candido and Bam Bam Bigelow. I thought they were great. I thought all those guys played really well off each other.
Al Fera.
Yeah, I think you're seeing Chris and I have a lot in common, and Matt and Ricky have a lot in common. So I would go for 4 Horsemen, but there's 2 versions that I love. So I love the original with Ole, Arn, Tully, Flair. But then I like the 96 version with Dean and Benoit. So that's my 4 Horsemen. Dangerous Alliance, loved it. You had Bobby Eaton, you had Zbyszko, Austin. I would probably then go. I think you kind of have to go. Actually, no, I'm going to go Triple Threat, but I'm going to go the Douglas, Candido, Bigelow, and then I'll be an outlier here. I'm going to say, and again, I'm saying this pure from how big they got, especially not having the type of mainstream American. I'm going to say the Bullet Club.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Ricky?
sure.
NWO, definitely top of the list. The founding NWO before it got really crazy, but just their impact was incredible. I'm gonna go Shield. Al probably hates that, but what they were super strong from the start. they started off strong, and then what everyone became, you take 3 guys and they're all superstars. They're all main event guys, which is great. DX, probably the Triple H New Age Outlaws version. Obviously the stuff with Sean was incredible, but that's, I think they just hit a different gear there, different times. So definitely DX. Man, there's just so many to choose from. But that Heart Foundation faction was incredible. Everyone in it, what they were doing in the moment. It's hard to top, really. You have all great workers in there. Well, almost all great workers. Anvil was awesome, but in his own way. But yeah, definitely Heart Foundation would round it out for me.
Chase.
Yeah, I was gonna say DX, the second incarnation of DX. As great as Sean and Triple H were together and that whole thing, of course, it wouldn't have existed without them. But the X-Pac and Outlaws and all that just hit in such a great time, and they were able to run with it because the Sean stuff was a little before, right? It was like a little before. It was the start of it, but it was a little before. And then once that got kicked into high gear, that was super fun to watch, like consistently. Original NWO, Hogan, Hall, and Nash, like that's what got me to watch WCW. Didn't even know what WCW was, basically, right? Until around that time. And then that was what got me to go like, all right, these guys are here. Let's check this out. And then as it expanded slightly, it was still cool. Like you said, once they started getting like 50 people in there, it got to be a little much. And I think everybody felt that way. So the original early on stuff. And I'm going to go New Day on my list because that's technically a faction, right? It's 3 guys put together in a thing. And I've loved everything they've done from the start. And that's no shocker to anybody in this chat. And so as a faction, definitely the New Day. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last one I would put up there just to see so if you're going to build a Mount Rushmore, I would put the entire corporate ministry on the Mount Rushmore. So the Mount Rushmore would be 7 miles long because the corporate ministry was so ridiculous when it was, remember that time it was a SmackDown when they lined up and it was the whole stage. It was Viscera, the Acolytes, Triple H. They were all there.
And the theme
was so good.
So good.
Vince in that evil spot and Shane with the laugh and just all of that stuff. It was such a great time. And so like that as a faction, I loved that corporate ministry thing, as crazy and ridiculous as it was.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome times.
And I should mention an honorable mention for themes, Unholy Alliance.
Yes.
Such a good theme. Big Show and The Undertaker.
So good.
Wasn't around very long.
Another one.
Man, it was good.
When I finally found the full, clear, perfect version of that, was a great day in my life.
Yeah. How long did that take? My God.
That was a while because there was a lot of themes. Trying to find themes and good versions was tough for some of those. Yeah, definitely.
You can do like a mashup of just, a Mount Rushmore of mashups that they've had over the years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Allied Powers.
We're also talking themes, but With My Baby Tonight technically isn't a theme, but it should be up there.
So good.
You could throw it in
good
there.
That was a good time.
On the Wrestle Rock Rumble, AWA.
Yep. Oh yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, classic.
Yep.
Absolutely. So up next, Mount Rushmore. We're just going to do one version. We'll do the personal version, Mount Rushmore of managers in the world of wrestling. So we're going to start with Mr. Chris Depetrillo.
All right, you've got to go with Bobby the Brain Heenan, the Heenan family, just an integral part of my youth, and he managed many of my favorites growing up. Same thing with Jimmy Hart. All those heels. It was so not weird, but growing up in the 80s, it was almost like, every heel had a manager or a faction. It's like nowadays when you get older and we're like, oh, another faction, like there's someone else in the Don Callis family. And then you think back to when we were kids and it was like, Bobby Heenan and Jimmy Hart, they managed 5 or 6 people at a time. And even Slick had 4 or 5 people at a time. So definitely Bobby the Brain Heenan, definitely Jimmy Hart. I'm going to throw another curveball out here. Like I said, I grew up as a world-class fan. I love Gary Hart because he was so different. He was very, if you think about like Jake the Snake's promos, just like that soft-spoken, sinister demeanor. He wasn't, screaming and yelling, Von Erichs, we're going to kill you. He was like, we're going to come out there and we're going to do this. Like, just very, like, there was a magnetism to him. Like, you felt like he was an actual bad guy in real life. And then, of course, one of my favorites, which I've had the pleasure of being able to work with him on all of his action figures for the last 10 years, was Jim Cornette. Because I was a big Midnight Express fan when he came over to the WWF. I loved seeing the Heavenly Bodies take on the Steiners. Like, that was my favorite thing about SummerSlam 1993. Wasn't a big Yoko guy, so when he was Yoko's manager, it was like, okay, like, whatever. But then when the Bulldog turned heel and we got Camp Cornette out of that, that was just, another. I didn't list that one as one of my favorite factions, but it was cool because being a fan of Bulldog and Owen, it was cool to see him managing them at that point as well. I think that they could have used him better towards the end, sticking him with all that NWA nonsense and everything. But I mean, you cannot beat the package of Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express.
Heavenly Bodies, another ridiculous theme song.
Originally used for the New Foundation.
So good.
Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart.
And Greg the Hammer Valentine, his babyface run.
Yes.
Yuck.
Yeah. Yep. Al Fera.
All right. So I'm wait, what are we doing again? What are we talking
Managers.
Sorry.
Oscar.
Yeah, that's my favorite. No, who managed the New Day? I really like them. Paul Heyman, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Bobby Heenan, Jim Cornette, and I'm gonna say Sensational Sherry.
Nice. All right. Matt Kenney.
Who did manage the New Day? Oh, that's right, nobody. Heenan for sure. Jimmy Hart had the ability to just get under people's skin with that damn microphone. It was so annoying, but it's great looking back on it for sure. Heyman as a manager for sure. And Jim Cornette, definitely. Jim Cornette is the 90s manager, or like the early mid 90s manager that, I know he did more than that, but man, he was fun to hate back then.
Yeah. For me personally, I would have to go with Paul Heyman, number one. He's just done an amazing job in his early days and now, and the way he's transitioned with the phone and still implements the phone, from time to time. But just his promos and his work around the ring, his facial expressions is crazy. Like, you can't top that. Paul Bearer is number two for me, just because he was so invested in the role, and his promos were great, and he really was a great storyteller in the different storylines that they had going on. Paul Bearer was a big one. Definitely Jimmy Hart, with that, like you said, with that megaphone and, all the heels that he managed, all the baby faces that he managed. I mean, he had been such an integral part of managing in general, both in WWF and WCW. So, Jimmy Hart definitely has to be there. And then Bobby the Brain Heenan. I don't think it's tough to have a Mount Rushmore of managers without Bobby Heenan, and he would get in there and he would take the bumps, and obviously, he's a wrestler as well, but he was the full package, and on the mic, I don't think he's unmatched pretty much. And my honorable mention, even though it may not be popular, would be Johnny Polo. I absolutely loved Johnny Polo. Like, you just wanted to destroy him. Like, he would just get under your skin, and he was such a good bad guy, good heel. Ricky?
I'm going to go with Paul Heyman. I'm going to go with Bobby the Brain Heenan. I'm going to go Jimmy Hart. And I'm going to go with Sonny for my 4.
Okay. All right. So next one, Mount Rushmore. Not personal favorites, but just, in general, who you think should be there. Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling. So let's kick it off with Chris Depetrillo.
This is going to be a tough one.
This is tough.
Because there shouldn't be one.
Terrible.
Awful.
Just do four Natty Hearts, and that's it. Natty Night.
What's that?
Just do 4 Natty Night Hearts.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think, because obviously, like, as a younger kid, I didn't care too much about like, the girls would come out and we didn't get like an extensive women's division when we were younger. We had the Jumping Bomb Angels for a time. We had Wendy Richter and stuff like that. I'll put Medusa up there for what she did in the ring and as a valet and a manager. She was used both ways, and she also has one of the most famous moments in wrestling war history when she dropped the belt in the trash. On the same token, I will do Bull Nakano because that was an effort to kind of bridge the gap between American women's wrestling and All Japan women and what was going on overseas. And then honestly, with women's wrestling, you've got to look more towards the Attitude Era and the modern era. I think that Trish Stratus is the prototype for what they were looking for, but she turned it into something greater. She didn't settle on just being a model, getting a career out of it. She actually put the work in and became a hell of a wrestler and had entertaining matches and had the longevity that allowed her to appear as recently as last year. And to that token, I will actually put Becky Lynch up there because Becky Lynch, I think, is what really elevated the women's division coming out of that whole Divas era where no one really took it seriously. When you had the girls, Charlotte, Sasha, Becky, and Bayley coming out of NXT, I think there was still that whole WWE doesn't treat women's wrestling very seriously. There's still all these models, the Bellas, and what have you. And I think that era that predated WrestleMania 2019 that got her over the most as a character leading up to her title win. You've got to give her credit because she became not just an over women's wrestler, she was one of the most over people in that company. So for that, I would put her up there.
So I'll go next. Not picking personal favorites, obviously. This is just the broad, vision of the women's division and what it's done for pro wrestling. In my opinion, you got to go with Fabulous Moolah. She was the first one to really, put it on a large scale as far as putting it on the map. Medusa for sure, because she made such a name for herself as Medusa in many territories, as well as Alundra Blaze on the other side of things. So, she did so much for women's wrestling, and she kind of brought that technical style, before it was really much of a thing. So she really kind of helped put that on the map. Trish Stratus for the Attitude Era for sure. She continued it on and really just brought it to heights it had never really been at before. And then after her, I would have to say present day Charlotte Flair. I think for women's wrestling, Charlotte's like one of the best to ever do it. So that would be my 4 there. Al Fera?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think, at least in the States, up until probably 6-7 years ago, there's ever been a real women's division. I think you had hints of it. I mean, you had a ton of stuff going on over in All Japan Women's Wrestling. I know they had a whole army of phenomenal workers, but aside from the Jumping Bomb Angels, I couldn't probably name one. I think if you want to kind of go a little nostalgia, and they weren't really a division, but they were a star in their time, you got to go Sherry Martel. You have to go Medusa. And again, I mean, when Alundra Blaze Medusa was in WWF, she didn't really have much of a roster to work against. They brought women over from Japan, but I mean, she worked against Bull Nakano and Leilani Kai. So she didn't have like a vast roster to work against, but they were both very much ahead of their time. I think Sherry, from a standpoint of being a mouthpiece as a manager, but could actually bump in the ring. I think the same probably goes for Medusa being a solid hand. If you're going to go current day, I don't think you can do it without saying Natty Neidhart. I think she's probably the most well-rounded female wrestler to ever get in the ring. And if you wanted to throw, I mean, you have that whole 4 horsewomen, and they kind of were the birth of, I would say, real American women's wrestling. TNA was definitely ahead of the curve with the women's division. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it was more of a mix of wrestling and TNA mixed in. So you had a little bit of both. I I would probably either throw Charlotte Flair in there or Becky Lynch to be that fourth spot. I think Charlotte's a bigger star, but I think Becky's a much better heel. So I think Becky has more of like an old school vibe to her. But I don't think you could have American Women's Hall of Fame if you asked this question a decade ago. Not a Hall of Fame, a Mount Rushmore.
Right.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, true.
Why don't we shoot it over to Matt?
Yeah, I mean, easy to echo the same sentiments. Not going to break any grounds here, but I will say though, I think Miss Elizabeth, because of that whole era, and she was the only one.
What was your favorite Miss Elizabeth match?
No, but it doesn't matter because you got the Elizabeth, you got the wedding and that whole thing, and that was just like that was brought it to the forefront, I guess. And then Medusa for sure, right? Just for that revolutionary thing, like nobody was doing much back then, so she kind of stood out. Trish in the Attitude Era, of course, and yeah, I would say Becky from this era, right? So it makes total sense. It's way different now, and there's a lot more talent now than there ever was. So go with that.
Cool.
Slick Rick.
I'm gonna go with Trish. Kind of what Chris said, I'm not going to repeat everything he said, but it was kind of like that new wave, and she really took it to the next step. Obviously, she had Lita there that carried her along the way, but for the most part, I think she was doing the heavy lifting. So definitely Trish. I'm going to go China as well, because she had such a massive impact. She was in a Rumble. She's wrestling guys. I think that kind of just brought a ton of eyes on the women's division at the time, even though she was dominating for the most part. I'm going to go Charlotte. I think you have to put it's kind of like a toss-up, right? If I'm picking from this new era, Charlotte and Becky, they're both there. And I think, in a few years, if we have the conversation again, Ripley is going to be up there. As far as like what she's doing in the ring, the talent now is just night and day. They're just so good. I love Asuka, what she's doing as well. But there's a ton of women that you can choose from, which is refreshing because 10 years ago, whatever, certain, especially during that Divas era, you knew what you were getting. 1 or 2 matches would be okay, but then they're getting 1 and 2 minutes, and I know the whole beef was, hey, we're not getting enough time. But to be honest, I don't think they were able to perform any longer than that and put out quality, and that's why they were getting 2 minutes. But now, you watch Raw, and you get 3 or 4 women's matches in one night, and you're not disappointed. They're doing a great job. But I'm definitely going to go probably Becky and Charlotte with China and Trish for now.
I think if you ask this question in like 5 years, no one on anyone's list would be before 2015.
Yeah, and no one would like bat an eye, like,
because like I think
the way it's going.
You have like Jordan Grace now. You have Megan Bain. I love her. I think you have Jade Cargill, who will probably be the biggest female star of all time in a couple of years. She just crushes it. So crazy. I mean, but there was nobody like a decade ago that was like you watching, well, maybe not a decade, 15 years ago, that you looked and watched and you thought their body of work was impressive in the ring.
It is nice we're at the point now where, like, the mid 90s, Alundra Blaze, Heidi Lee Morgan, there was just a couple, you could have a couple matches to choose from, and that was pretty much it in the WWE. And fast forward to now, you can't even fit the women that you have on the roster in a 30-woman Royal Rumble. So, we've come so far and we have so much talent now,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you look at the NXT roster right now, I think the women's side is stronger than the men's, because you have Kalani Jordan, Jada Parker, Kendall Gray, like some of these girls that are in NXT, like they're killing it. And once they get up to the main roster, Sal Ruka, Zarya, like that portion of the roster, like WWE is going to be fine with women's wrestling for years to come, just based on the people they have on the main roster now and in NXT, yet to be called up.
So up next is basically personal favorite. and it's going to be the match. So top 4 matches in the history of wrestling, and then we'll close it out with our final after that. So top 4 matches, pro wrestling history. And obviously, we're not going to do 2 versions of that one, but really however you want to look at it, whether it's your personal favorite matches or matches on a grand scale, how it's looked at that way. But why don't we start with Mr. Al Fera?
We're going to go Taker, Shawn Michaels at 25. I think an absolutely perfect match. It's a hard one. We will go with Dusty and Flair, Starrcade 83. Right? Yeah, because 83. I'm not going to say Steamboat Savage because everyone says Steamboat Savage. Then I think you need to go a really good match. Wow, this one's getting me. You know what? Because of a nostalgia purpose, I think it's a really good one. I'm going to put Flair and Shawn from 24.
Okay.
I think that's a great match.
You guys were there for that one, right?
We were, yeah. And then I'm trying to think of another really you know what? I will put I think it was Heatwave 97. It was RVD and Sabu. Right, Chris? Is it 97? Or
98?
98? That was a match that I remember
so, yeah.
being blown away when I watched it.
I believe that one was 98.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as, I'm sure if I watch it now, it's not as good as I remember, but it was a really good match. I remember that. So I would put that, and that's a really weird top 4, but that's the first 4 that I could think of that stood out.
So I'll throw my personal ones out there. For me, I would say Foley, Taker, Hell in a Cell, just because of how impactful, it was on the industry at that time. And I just, as a fan, it was, unimaginable. It was like, wow, this is unbelievable, and it just kept topping each moment the further it went. WrestleMania 25, Taker, HBK, that was a work of art. And I feel like, Steamboat and Macho Man is always talked about, but I feel like, not taking away anything from that match, but I feel like the Taker HBK has almost, kind of topped that as far as this is the match you need to see if you're going to watch a match, and that is just so good. So I have to put that in there. Brett and Austin, WrestleMania 13, one of my personal favorites, and just the iconic, screenshots of the action and how impactful those were on the industry. And the fourth one for me might be kind of a stretch. I don't know if it counts, but I would throw it in there anyway, just because of how much I like that match, the 1992 Royal Rumble match itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. It's so good. I mean, I have to put it there.
You took 3 of mine, so now I'm trying to shuffle it. Your first 3 were my first 3, and I'm
well, that's fine. You can
remember.
You know what?
We're going to share a taste. It's not trying to pick a different one.
I'll just piggyback off of that. So, Sean Taker, Brett Austin. I'm actually going to toss in WrestleMania 10 ladder match for me. Razor being my guy, and then I always like Sean when he went heel. I was like a heel guy as a kid, still am for the most part. But whole barbershop thing. So it was 2 guys that I liked. But that just changed. I had never seen a ladder match before. To that point, and I think they just crushed it. And just to mix it up a little bit, just because I'm just tossing in my personal favorite, and because I was there, and it's just it's not like a big pay-per-view match or anything, but
Beyond 04? Oh no,
Dandy.
Mankind versus The Rock for the title in Worcester. Yeah. Because of everything that happened, obviously him winning, but then that Austin pop mixed in was and I've been to a ton of WrestleManias, like everything across the board. The loudest pop I've ever heard.
Mhm.
Like the Worcester Centrum was shaking. It was unbelievable. So I'm gonna toss that in there, personal favorite. And obviously I was gonna go Mankind and Taker, Hell in a Cell, but we'll switch it up a little bit.
Nice. Chris Depetrillo.
All right, so I'm going to go Midnight Express versus the Fantastics from the spring of '88. Just a phenomenal tag match. The 1992 War Games, which was the Dangerous Alliance against Sting, Dustin Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, Barry Windham, and Nikita Koloff. A match that is still an oddity to this day. Not another one has been done, but just the randomness of it, and it was an entertaining match. I love the 1995 Survivor Series wild card match, and I want them to bring that
So
team back
good.
at some point. That
I
would
thought you
be
were
with
gonna
the
say
roster they
the
have now.
Finland
They could do a whole show of wild card matches at some point. And then Brett versus Austin, just because not just the in-ring action, but the psychology and the story to it and everything that it led to. It was two of my favorites of all time. Everything just hit on all cylinders with that match. I could watch that match right now and then it ends, and then I would watch it again and not be sick of it.
Awesome. Matt Kenney.
Yeah, Brett Austin, WrestleMania 13 is an all-timer. It's really hard to debate that, right? Like no matter what. Also for me, the 1992 Royal Rumble. I didn't think you were going to think of that, so I thought I might be able to throw one in that wouldn't have gotten said. But man, that 92 Rumble is just the best. There's just nothing better. It's from top to bottom. Bobby Heenan's commentary, the star power in it, Boss Man's elimination or whatever when he goes and smashes his head on there, and Hogan and the finish and all that stuff, and then Flair winning. It was such a great one. Also for me, one of my favorite matches of all time that I have watched a million times and love it every single time is I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was actually called a TLC match, or was it? Dudley's, Hardy's, Edge and Christian, WrestleMania 2000. Not X7, not SummerSlam, whatever.
Is that the one with all the interference?
No.
Yeah.
That's the one
with all the interference.
What?
X7 was the one with all the interference with Rhino, Spike Dudley, and Lita.
Yes,
that was
the next year.
2001.
I'm talking about this was the first one at 2000 where Jeff jumped off the top of the ladder and Edge and Christian won it. And that to me, I don't think anybody ever talks about it hardly. They always they were WrestleMania X7 and the spear Edge hits off the ladder. Like that clip gets shown over and over again. And like, I think it sort of flies under the radar a little bit, but man, you watch that. It is so much fun. Those guys just absolutely killed themselves out there. It was such an awesome match. And even at the time was like, oh my God, this is incredible what I'm seeing. And clearly the best match of that show, because that was the one that was like, didn't they do WrestleMania all day? Right. Wasn't that all day long leading up to that? I think everyone was kind of burned out. Yeah. So, what did I say now? That's Austin at Mania. That's it. So Taker Shawn Mania 25. Yes, absolutely. It is a 99.5% perfect match. There are a couple of moments in there where you go back and watch it close. There's a couple of spots you're like, ooh, uh-oh. But the emotion of it, the everything coming together, the entrances, the build, that whole thing, and then also kind of elevated Undertaker to more than just like the WrestleMania undefeated. Like it, it brought him up because then he had that run where Shawn the next year, then Triple H the next year, like it definitely kind of bumped him up a level. I think that first one for sure, and it really is it's so awesome. And watching it back, it really is so much fun to watch. And then actually another match that I watched a million times, and I'm going to put on as like a sleeper pick is RVD versus Jeff Hardy from Invasion. I'm telling you, if you don't remember that, if anyone doesn't, go back and watch it. The match ruled for that time, and those two guys trying to prove themselves. It was awesome. Definitely. And it's one of those like, you just put it on and I can watch it anytime and it holds up and it's fun and it's a dream match. Exactly. And then I'm going to throw one little like extra. Ray versus Kurt Angle from SummerSlam 02. Best opening match of any show.
Opener, which was
in
crazy.
history.
Yeah.
Right.
Facts.
Definitely.
Can I do a redo? Because now that I'm thinking of what I said, I hated them all. It was a bad one. I was the first one on the spot. All
do
right,
it. Let's go.
All right, we're going Royal Rumble 92. Best Royal Rumble of all time, but just the match with more star power than any other match. I'm going to go Owen Brett from 10.
Okay.
Yep. Also an opener.
That might be the best opening match of all time.
I'm going to throw this one in there because I think it had a lot to do with where the industry is now. I'm going to say Cody versus Nick Aldis at All In. I think
first All In.
They did something that they obviously were copying HBO and boxing a little bit, but somehow through YouTube and some unbelievable editing, they had a bunch of people caring about Tim Storm, Nick Aldis, guys who really, aside from his time in TNA, like they were treating them like they were actual real world's champions when they were doing that 10 Pounds of Gold docuseries online. And I think it was a good match to begin with, but I think it was the first time in probably 25 years the NWA title actually meant something. There was main eventing a show. I'm going to stick with Flair and Dusty from Starrcade. But then if I have to throw I guess a number 5 in there, I would say Piper Valentine, the dog collar match.
Great match.
Nice. Okay. All right. That's a good redo right there.
Yeah, my first one was weak. Weak.
I think we can accept that as an official.
Yeah, you came in late. You weren't,
I wasn't prepared. I didn't have my notes.
All right.
Your mind wasn't in the game yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not yet.
So now we're going to end it. The big finale. It's a 2-parter. So obviously the men's Mount Rushmore, both the personal favorite side and the other side of things, grand scheme of things. So, I'm going to start it off. For me personally, personal favorite, which has probably already changed since you asked me this question the other day, Matt. But it's usually around the same. Kurt Angle, for me, one of my all-time favorites. Bret the Hitman Hart, The Undertaker, who is always my number one favorite, and Psycho Sid. So that is my personal favorite of all time. And then as far as the other side of things, as far as who has kind of shaped the business, and it's so hard to do that side because there are so many eras, and there are eras before us that, there were stars that were just huge, and selling out Madison Square Garden. But the way I'm looking at it is there are stars beyond that, in later eras that have done that and more, and even brought the industry into, larger pockets. So for me, I'm going to say Hulk Hogan. I feel like, he once again put it on the map. It was already on the map, obviously, but really brought it to that next level. John Cena, for his whole run. I mean, he carried the industry for 20 years, really, when a lot of the bigger names were, retiring and no longer around. John Cena was that guy that was kind of, keeping it alive. And, he was just as popular as Hulk Hogan was with kids. You know what I mean? I mean, he was the guy. So John Cena, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Attitude Era. I feel like nobody's really bigger than Stone Cold. I feel like it's arguable, obviously, but he almost kind of even surpassed Hogan. Obviously, Hogan was more iconic because of all the films and everything that he did, and he was just such a public figure. But if you really break it down industry-wise, I feel like Stone Cold is just as popular, as Hogan, if not more popular. And then number 4, just because of how iconic he was, not only to the industry, but a worldly figure. Everybody knew him, whether you liked wrestling or not. Andre the Giant. So I would have to say Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, with a runner-up being Bruno Sammartino, who for the longest time held the record of selling out Madison Square Garden, when wrestling wasn't what it is today, and he was still, filling those arenas. So I would have to give the honorable mention to Bruno. Why don't we send it over to Mr. Ricky Gonzalez?
Great. I was going to ask you if I can go because I actually have to go right after this.
Yeah.
But I do want to thank you for having me on. This was awesome. Obviously talking wrestling with you guys, we could do this forever. So my personal favorite, we're going to go Shawn. we're going Brett, we're going Kurt Angle, and we're going Razor Ramon. I think, overall, it's just like the impact they had on me watching them work. Razor's my favorite of all time. Brett, I think, is just phenomenal. You go back and watch any Bret Hart match now, and it just every move, every movement really looked like it meant something. He was just telling a perfect story. Kurt Angle is just an absolute beast from the start. Like how quickly he just started dominating his matches. Even his TNA run, which I caught bits and pieces here and there, but now catching up with all the clips, he was absolutely insane. Some people say his TNA run was actually better than his WWE run, which is extremely hard to top. Obviously HBK is just, he's probably, well, we'll get there. So that's my personal favorite. And then, as far as like all time Mount Rushmore for wrestling, I'm going to go with Hogan. I'm going to go with Austin. I'm going to go with John Cena. And just to top it off with the current environment where we are now, I'm going to go with Roman Reigns. And that's the top four for me. But thank you for having me on. I will catch you guys soon.
Thanks for being here, Ricky. I noticed this actually I forgot to hit the recording button. So if you could just do this over again.
Hey, listen, if you want to wait 20 minutes, I'll be back home. I just got to do a quick pickup and we can start over. Al will have his list ready to go. I felt like calling Al out, and I just kept thinking of The Rock and Cena promo when Cena called The Rock out for writing the stuff down. And I just see Al looking over. He came back strong, though. He came back strong with his notes.
25 years of heavy drinking has jotted my memory a little bit. So I needed to put some notes down.
Well, thank you for being here, Ricky.
Later. Thank you so much.
All right. Later. Chris Depetrillo, let's hit it.
All right. So I'll start with the personal first. And, I was talking to Matt about this a couple of days ago. So this was hard. So my caveat to it was it had to be guys that I have always been a fan of, like no lulls. So no matter where they went, what the gimmick was, like I was always a fan. They hooked me, they kept me through and through. So my personal Mount Rushmore is Ravishing Rick Rude. I was a fan before he went to the WWF. I was a fan all through that run, even when he beat the Ultimate Warrior, who I loved as a kid. I was never a Hogan guy, I was a Warrior guy. And then that WCW run with the Dangerous Alliance and everything, that's just one of my favorite. He was one of my favorite heels ever, just that short run. But Ravishing Rick Rude, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, big fan of the Dragon as a younger kid. Loved it when he beat Ric Flair, had the series with Flair in the NWA. Even when he came back as the gimmicky version of the Dragon, I was just excited that he was back in the WWF. Really cool Hasbro figure. It was one of my favorite Hasbro figures. Mm-hmm. And then I've mentioned it earlier in the podcast, my two favorite of all time, and luckily they got to team with each other, but Brian Pillman and Steve Austin. So Stunning Steve Austin, Flying Brian, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Loose Cannon Brian Pillman, especially like that Loose Cannon character, just with the way that he changed and he went from this white meat baby face and into like this, he was kind of like, on the button of pop culture at the time. 90s pop culture was getting to be very gritty and rock music and hip hop and wrestling. People were getting smarter because of things like the Wrestling Observer and the internet. And just to actually make a character that still felt real at that time and not like a corny high-fiving baby face. Like if he was still here, like if he didn't pass away, that was the type of character the world needed. I mean, that was a nice precursor to the Attitude Era, but just in wrestling in general, Brian Pillman's my favorite of all time. And then what happened with Steve Austin going from a pretty boy into like the ultimate ass kicker, just the way that he transcended from one role to another almost seamlessly. He left WCW with Stunning Steve, had that little stopover in ECW where he kind of shed that skin a little bit. And then to come in, he did the ringmaster thing for a little bit, but he wasn't flamboyant. He was just kind of like Stone Cold in the early stages. But those are my four all-time favorites. I was with them through and through. I love them. Even watching like old clips today, there's never a time where I'm like, why did I like that? Like they still hit just as hard as they did back then. Mm-hmm. As far as who belongs on a Mount Rushmore in my eyes, like I said, I've never been a Hogan guy, but you can't deny it. He belongs there. what he did to the business, transcending pop culture, being in movies, being on the A-Team, being, a guest host on things, Saturday Night Live before WrestleMania. You've got to put him there. Bruno Sammartino, maybe it's the Italian in me. Joe, you mentioned him as an honorable mention. I would actually put him on mine. Steve Austin, for what he meant to the business and to the Attitude Era, I would absolutely have him on there. And then just for how he was the counteraction to the gimmicky, rock and wrestling or the WWF, he felt like an authentic world champion. I've got to put Ric Flair on there. Ric Flair holding the NWA belt, being the cornerstone of the NWA and then WCW, even when things seemed bad for whether it was Ted Turner and the stuff behind the scenes or losing people on the roster, he was the ultimate reliable guy. And usually he could prop the promotion up. So, we talked about John Cena carrying a promotion and everything. I think that Ric Flair did a lot more good for the wrestling business than people kind of give him credit for, because he propped up a lot of unforeseen circumstances or silly circumstances and allowed the business to continue to thrive and be successful by being the world champion or by being a focal point.
Al Fera.
I mean, right off the bat, my favorite wrestler of all time, Dusty Rhodes. He's the greatest wrestler that's ever lived, greatest promo that's ever lived. I think if there wasn't a Vince McMahon, Dusty Rhodes would have been Vince McMahon, in the sense of he had a brain for large scale booking, and I think he was a little bit of sports entertainment during pro wrestling times. So Dusty Rhodes is definitely the one spot. I'm going to go Ric Flair as number 2, and this is my personal choice. I think Ric Flair, from a 360 standpoint, he's the greatest professional wrestler of all time. He could work, he could talk, carried himself like a world champion. He really was, he was like the quintessential 80s heel, like Gordon Gekko type of Wall Street, but could still, cut next to Dusty, I think the best promos that ever were. A guy that I loved watching his stuff when he was in Smoky Mountain, a guy that I loved in ECW. I still thought he was a great worker in WWF, but it was a horrible gimmick. And then when he went to WCW and then went to young Chris Candido, I think potentially could have been, and he was first a guy that wasn't a monster. He worked like a monster. He was a really, really good, solid guy that I love watching. And then I'm going to go CM Punk on my Mount Rushmore. He's a newer guy, but another one that I think he's that little, hints of old school in him. Like he's a little bit of Harley, a little bit of Flair, a little bit of Austin. And then if I had to do a 5th pick on there, I would probably throw Kevin Nash, because I was obsessed with him for most of my life. And I know he's not on anyone else's Mount Rushmore, but he's on mine. From a standpoint of like actually a true Mount Rushmore, I think Flair and Hogan kind of have to go neck and neck on there, because before there was, Hulkamania, NWA was the premier territory in the United States. It's made up of many territories. So go Hogan, Flair. I think Austin, because he brought mid-90s wrestling back. And then Cena, because he kind of follows, he carried the business. And then you can go either way, before or after. You could either say Bruno, because he was, the precursor to Hulkamania, or you could say Reigns, because he took over after Cena kind of became a little bit part-time. But I would definitely go, Flair, Hogan, Austin, and Cena.
Nice. Very nice. Matt Kenney.
So that's exactly what I was going to say for the overall. We'll get that one out of the way, because Flair, Austin, Hogan, Cena, because of their respective, like, they were the top guys, the leaders of their eras, that kind of thing. And then Cena in the modern era, and Austin in the 90s, and Hogan and Flair in the 70s, 80s. And it's kind of one of those. It's tough because wrestling is so era focused, where we really have these distinctly different time periods where things felt different, things acted different, things were more important then than they were now, things were more important now than they were then, like all that stuff. So it's hard to sort of say, like, does Reigns belong on there over a Flair? But Reigns' body of work for the last, whatever it is, 15 years is huge, and it's what was helping to carry the business now. But yet now the business does seem more like a collective versus like back then it was Hogan. It was Hogan. And then you got a little Warrior, a little this, a little that, but it was Hogan. And even in the 90s, it was Austin. You got a little Rock, you got a little of that. So definitely Hogan, Flair, Austin, Cena as the overall big picture. My personal, slightly different, pretty close, but I got Austin on there for sure. That 90s Attitude Era is just untouchable, and all the stuff afterwards, everything he did during it, everything he's done since. Even up to that amazing match he had with Owens a couple of years ago, that was so like out of nowhere, so much fun. Shawn Michaels is on my also on my own personal. Nobody like him in the ring during his run, and quite possibly the second half of his run better than the first, if that even makes sense. But it seemed as if when he came back and everything from that mid 2000s and until his retirement, he was putting on the best match of anybody, even just on a Raw. So Shawn, Austin, CM Punk is my third. I've been a fan of Punk since 2003 Ring of Honor, and him versus Raven in the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match in Dorchester or whatever. And when his music hit and that guy came out, I didn't know who he was and no clue. And I was like, instantaneously, this guy's awesome. Love this guy. And just sort of followed it, never let that go. So he's my number 3. And number 4, I got to put the Macho Man, Randy Savage, as my number 4. Oh yeah. I mean, from the voice, from the mannerisms, from the over the top, everything about him, Macho Man was just the coolest guy ever. He's so much fun, and he's stood the test of time. And while he wasn't the star that some of these guys were, as in like movies and TV and crossovers and all this other stuff, he still has his own place in pop culture and wrestling. And I just love everything that Savage has ever done, for sure.
Macho Man definitely deserves a spot there. It's just so hard because, usually you're thinking about Hogan and Flair, and obviously they were a little bit bigger than Macho, but at the same time, Macho Man worldwide was known, whether you're a wrestling fan or not. He's on that list of a couple guys, Hogan, Andre, Macho. Everybody knew who that was,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Well, thank you guys for being here. This has been awesome. I appreciate it. And, we will certainly have you guys back for something in the future. We'll do something like this again.
Listen, yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
For Ricky Gonzalez, Matt Kenney, Christy Depetrillo Al Fera, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. We want to know what your favorite Mount Rushmores are. Put them in the comments, and we'll talk about it next time we're on. So thank you so much, and see you all next time.